to go 9-2 to get to 10 wins, to get to 10-5-1, which will get you in the playoffs 9 times out of 10, and may win you the division too, because I think the teams are going to knock each other off a little bit. Because Detroit's no slouch either, necessarily. They knocked out the Patriots.
Good, but they're hard to play against.
Yeah, that's right. Not great, and you can get Stafford on a good day, and he's had some good days against
and
the
against
Purple.
he has 3 excellent receivers, and now it looks like they have a running game.
That's right. So I think this division's tough, and the Vikings are still looking at going to New England, going to Seattle, a couple tough road games. As we said, the home and home with the Bears. You got New Orleans coming in, and that'll be an angry bunch, that. And so, although the Saints have their problems on defense too this year. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it all unfolds. But yeah, the schedule, as you said, it's not necessarily who you play, it's when you play them. And after this week, it seems like it's going to get a little bit better when Arizona comes in here, but who knows? And we thought that about Buffalo, didn't we?
Right. And Josh Rosen has handled himself well so far, and they have a heck of a running back. They have a heck of a cornerback. They have a heck of a receiver. That's the thing. There aren't many NFL teams that are really easy to beat. There are NFL teams that are going to end up in the bottom of the standings. That doesn't mean they're easy to beat when you face them.
No, that's right. And it's, as we said, it's going to be a battle. And I think we had our players show on WCCO Radio this week on Monday night out at the Lone Oak Grill in Eagan, which I always encourage people to come out for that show. And Harrison Smith was on with us, as he is every other week. And we also had David Morgan, really nice guy, classy guy. And so is Harrison, really enjoying doing the show. But I really sensed kind of a gritting your teeth kind of feeling this week, especially out of Harrison, that they know they got to buckle down and get things back on track here. And so it's going to be a challenge for that Eagles team. You got to figure, Jim, that Doug Peterson has got to be scheming ways to try to get similar type of matchups that Sean McVay did with Anthony Barr or whatever kind of coverage they're going to try to manipulate to get some of his tough receivers. And I'm talking about Alshon Jeffrey, who
he's back now.
Was back now, had a 100-yard game last week and killed the Vikings in the NFC Championship game. Zach Ertz is a really good tight end, and we were talking to Harrison about him, and he's a guy that's already got, I think, 31 catches on the season for the Eagles, and very, very much a threat. And we know the Vikings have had trouble with tight ends in the past, even going back to the opener against San Francisco. So there are a lot of challenges ahead in this game, and I think their hope has to be that maybe Wentz is not quite as sharp yet, although he did have a 300-yard game last week, and even in a losing cause down in Tennessee. And so it's a tough matchup, but I worry about Peterson scheming late at night on how he's going to try to get these matchups that have been hurting the Vikings with this misdirection plays and counter plays and all those type of things to get these receivers out there. And I think the key thing with plays like that, such as the one that Cooks got deep on, where he came across the formation, and is that the quarterback's got to have time to throw.
Yeah, that play took a long time to develop.
It sure did. And so, again, we get back to Griffen's gone, and can Danielle Hunter do it by himself? Can Sheldon Richardson have more impact as a pass rusher too? Do they have to blitz? And if they blitz, are they going to get caught? And so those are the things that have to be a big concern to the defensive coaches as they look at this Philadelphia offense, who also run the ball pretty well.
Yeah.
And with Ajayi. And so that was one of the things that I thought was troubling last week too, that Gurley was more efficient running the ball than he was last year against the Vikings. I think he had 83 yards rushing, and it seemed like a lot of first down plays he was grinding out 8-9 yards, which really puts the defense in a bad spot. So those are part of the things they have to clean up. And then offensively, the offensive line situation definitely they have to give Cousins more time. They have to protect him, but a big part of that is running the ball and being able to run the ball more effectively.
So I'm at the NFC Championship game, and so were a lot of my friends as fans, so were a lot of Viking staff and family members. And I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen ugly fan behavior a million different places. I've never seen fan behavior as ugly as it was before the NFC Championship game, the way Eagles fans were in the parking lots throwing bottles, throwing beer, full cans of beer, screaming expletives, threatening women. There were Viking family and staff members sitting in the stands who had beer dumped on them as soon as they were identified as Viking people. It wasn't funny. It wasn't cute. It wasn't like, it wasn't like Packer fans trying to razz the Viking fans, which we see all the time. It was ugly, and I think it was criminal. What's your experience? Have you seen that kind of behavior to that level, and have you ever seen that in Philadelphia in your experience?
Yeah, I definitely saw it in Philadelphia. We played there during one of the strike years, and it was really ugly because, first of all, the fans were not happy that the Scab team was showing up to play, and yeah, they were just out of control, ugly, throwing stuff at us, throwing stuff at the bus, and I don't know that we had a lot of friends and family out there because it was the strike games, but that was a bad experience. One of the worst experiences that I remember ever being on the road, and we played playoff games in Philadelphia, and it's a tough environment, tough place to play, and yeah, you'd like to say, hey, can you get a little more security going on here or something?
See, that's the thing, is that there are other fan bases where you could see really bad behavior breaking out, but they actually have cops around who aren't going to let it happen. Philadelphia, I think the cops are in on it. The cops are like, yeah, go ahead, throw crap at the bus.
Right, exactly. And so that's very disconcerting.
Yes,
definitely to a visiting team and to the visiting team fan base, and so I definitely caution Viking fans, if you're going to Philadelphia, don't wear your purple this week. It's not a good idea. You can get away with it in Green Bay, and to a certain extent, but
you might get razzed. Somebody might give you the business, but they're not going to beat you up.
No, that's right, but it could happen in Philly. So not a good environment and tough place, and sometimes it seems I know that we've had that experience in Washington and in New York.
Washington's pretty bad
in New York, and playing playoff games in those environments, and so it's just, as we said, can we get a little more security, especially in the sections where the team has their tickets and all that, and you would hope that's the case, but not always the case, unfortunately.
And by the way, if you're interested, if you like this show, you can also check out the Viking Update show on this network with Tim Yoder, longtime publisher of Viking Update. And on that show, I told a story about the Eagles putting Santa Claus in jail, so you might enjoy that as well.
Hey, speaking of the Eagles now, so I was writing this week for my Sporting News column about Andy Reid.
Yeah.
An ex-Eagles coach, and having some pretty good success down in Kansas City now.
With the son of a guy I used to cover.
Yes, exactly. We've talked about Patrick Mahomes before, and now he's only up to 14 touchdowns and no interceptions, a 126.5 rating. And what I was saying in the piece I wrote is that, first of all, Andy Reid has gotten credit in the past and should get more credit as a quarterback whisperer, quarterback developer, starting with Brett Favre, going to Alex Smith, or Donovan McNabb, who he led to. They went to 4 straight conference championship games, but everybody in Philly was on their case because they couldn't win the Super Bowl. They got to 1 Super Bowl, lost a bunch of playoff games, and then on to Kansas City. He trades for Alex Smith, and Alex Smith has his best years under Andy Reid in Kansas City. Starts running, being a dual threat guy, which he's been very effective. But then he drafts when they lose 2 straight home playoff games. Meanwhile, they've drafted Patrick Mahomes, and after Kansas City lost to the Titans in the wild card game last year, they send Smith packing and turn it over to Mahomes, and a lot of people wonder, was he ready? Well, apparently Andy Reid knew he was ready has developed him, and so time to give Andy Reid even more credit as a quarterback developer, but also as one of the best head coaches of all time. I think people never talk about him in the same realm as a Belichick, and now Belichick's got 5 Super Bowl wins, which separates him, but Andy Reid's the 9th winningest coach all time. But he's never talked about among the legendary coaches, the Shulas, the Landrys, the Belichicks, the Lombardis, the George Hallases, whoever. And maybe he should be, because I think, first of all, it's hard to win in the playoffs. It's hard to win in the Final Four. And so maybe cut the guy some slack, but fans are not going to do that. And the fans in Kansas City have a short memory from the playoffs last year, so they're going to be expecting, okay, we got this hot young quarterback here, and now you better go and take us on a long playoff run, Andy, or else. So he's kind of in a tough spot.
He is, and I think there are two things that hurt Andy in terms of his reputation. Because you're right, the winning, the development of quarterbacks, winning in different places, it's all there. It makes for a great resume. I think the playoff losses hurt. The other thing that hurts him is he is great at a lot of things, program building, offensive scheme, developing players. He's not great at clock management. And when people are watching a game and the head coach looks like he doesn't know when to call a timeout or how to handle the last 2 minutes of a game, it hurts his reputation badly, whether it should or not.
Yeah, and perhaps he needs someone upstairs to be helping him with that.
I think he just needs some help.
Yeah,
he tries to do so much.
Yeah.
He's the offensive coordinator. He calls the plays. He's the quarterback coach. He's the head coach, and he's trying to manage the clock. I just think that's one of those things where if he would just hand off that assignment, it would probably clear up a lot of problems.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that hurt them in that playoff game with the Titans when they blew a 21-3 halftime lead in that game last year in that wild card game. So I think you're right that there is perhaps a little bit of a wart on him in terms of that clock management. But that's where, as we said, get somebody upstairs who can help you to understand exactly what's going on at every moment in the game and kind of go from there. But so you want my Chris Dolman story?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so it's my first year as GM, and I've got 45 unsigned players. So Mike Lynn knew when it was time to leave. And I've got Chris Dolman coming up. Now, this is pre-free agency. So his only recourse if I don't get him signed is to hold out at that point in time. But he's coming off 21 sacks, one shy of the NFL record at that time, first team All-Pro, and he and Millard are kicking butt on the defensive line. And so it's my first big negotiation as a GM, because I'd been negotiating contracts for 5 years, doing some of the later round picks, helping Mike Lynn with research on the big deals, and doing some other veteran deals. But now this is kind of the big guys I'm doing. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to go out to D.C., Washington, D.C., and meet with Chris Dolman's agent, who is David Falk, big NBA agent, as you know.
Yes.
And so we get I go out there, sit down with him in his office, and all this NBA stuff on the walls. He spends the first basically 2 hours of our discussion talking to me about Michael Jordan, who he represents, Allen Iverson, Patrick Ewing, all these NBA guys. And finally I had to say, David, can we talk about Chris Dolman, please? Of course, he's trying to intimidate me as a young negotiator.
Yes, he
clearly,
is. That's what
clearly.
He does. He used to try to intimidate me when I call him, so I know he isn't trying to intimidate you.
Yeah, exactly. And so finally we go round and round, and I make him an offer as we get a little closer to camp, equal to Reggie White and Bruce Smith as the top defensive ends in the league, which was basically, I think, $1.8 to $2 million a year at that point. Today it would be $20 million.
Right.
Which is or more than that now, which Khalil Mack got, I think, 23, 24, Aaron Donald. But at that point, this is 1991, and so $2 million a year. And so we finally get the deal agreed to, give him a nice signing bonus, about $5 million or something, which is pretty big in those days. And David Falk says to me, Chris is so happy, he's so thrilled with the security of the signing bonus and everything. You won't hear from us for 5 years, 5-year deal. And I say, okay, great, David. And so, of course, 2 years later, free agency comes to the NFL. And Reggie White signs with Green Bay for $4.5 million a year or whatever, $4.3 million a year. And ring, the first call I get is from David Falk. Chris is 2 years into a 5-year deal. And David goes, Chris can't play into that deal. I said, David, you told me I wouldn't hear from you for 5 years. He goes, well, we knew that Reggie would jump Chris, but we didn't think he'd leapfrog him, and Chris refuses to play under that deal. And so, of course, we go round and round, and finally I end up having to trade him to Atlanta, I think, for a first and second round pick. Now, Chris was
which is a pretty good deal.
Which is pretty good. Chris was close to 30 years old at that time, had probably had his best years. He still had a couple more really good years in Atlanta, went out to San Francisco, ended up coming back here.
I remember that.
And so... But it was just one of those stories where you think you've done a good deal at the time and you think you've negotiated a good deal, and 2 years later it blows up in your face. And same thing happened to me with Gary Zimmerman on the eve of free agency when we lost him. and he had not played a down under his new contract. And we could talk